Hey, what's up guys, Alex here. Thank you for checking this video and welcome to the lesson number 4 of the series of tutorial on how to build a premium theme for WordPress. Welcome again. In this tutorial, we're gonna finally take a look on how to create some custom options in our administration panel. We wanna create a specific set of options inside our general page that we created inside the Sunset administration section that we custom created in the previous lesson. What we're gonna achieve basically is the same thing we can find in the general page of the settings section. So we are gonna have some specific fields, some checkbox, some radio button, drop downs, and whatever we need to customize properly the experience of our administration panel and give the user all the options that we want him to customize. So let's jump right into it. Before starting, we have to understand how to do it properly because, of course, as we noticed in the previous lesson, if we open the template that we're using, the sunsetadmin.php file, you notice here we can write PHP code, we can write HTML code, we can input JavaScript, CSS, whatever we want. So we could easily and manually create a form element, a form HTML with all the inputs inside and then track the post object and save the post object in our database. But we don't want to do that. We don't want to do it manually because it's less safe for our theme to have everything written manually. We want to actually use the WordPress built-in functions to do less work as possible because, of course, as every developer in the world, we are totally lazy, and so we try to find the best solution with the less effort ever. And also because if we do it manually and we don't follow the pre-made hooks and functions of WordPress, we could encounter the problem in the future versions of WordPress that our code could be obsolete. So we wanna future-proof our theme and make it as adaptive, as compatible as possible with even the future versions of WordPress. So let's always, when possible, of course, use the pre-made functions of WordPress. These functions, especially for the custom options, are called the Settings APIs. So the Settings API are a collection of functions, hooks, and actions to create a custom options, custom settings, and automatically save these settings inside the database without us caring and worrying about sanitization, optimization, or like checking user permissions, or all these other stuff that could really create some serious problem in our database. So everything will be handled by WordPress. We have to just care about styling properly our custom form, and all the rest WordPress will take care of it for us. So let's get started with the Settings API. First of all, let's access our function-admin.php, where we created the function sunset add admin page to generate the administration panel pages. Let's remove the space between the two. Let's create a comment here called activate custom settings. And inside here, we can write add action. And the exact moment I want to trigger this action is during the initialization of the admin section. And here, as usual, we know already, we have to write the function that we want to call at that specific time. So in my case is sunset custom settings and semicolon at the end. So why am I doing this? Why I'm not putting this action outside the function of whatever you want. I'm doing this for a kind of a safety precaution because putting the action inside the function of the generation of the menu prevents the system to generate a custom settings, to call the function to generate the custom settings if we are not actually creating the page. So if the system is not starting properly and is skipping the generation of the administration page, we avoid completely to keep going and generating custom options and updating the database, because we don't want that if we don't actually have an administration section to edit. So keep going, let's copy this and let's write function, the name of the function that we decide, brackets, and inside the bracket we can finally start registering our options. So the first function, the first hook that I want to use from the settings API is the register underscore setting. The register underscore setting gives us the ability to create a specific section in the database, in the WP options table of the WordPress database, to record a custom group of settings, a custom group of fields, of options that could be inputs, checkbox, dropdowns, or whatever options our user wants to save. So we have a bunch of attributes that we can specify. The first attribute is the option group. So it's the unique name that we want to use to save this collection of informations inside one single place, inside one single database field. So this option has to have a unique name to recall it later, and in my case it's going to be sunset settings group. The second attribute is the option name. The option name is the name of a specific single option. So if we want to save a custom field, or if we want to save a checkbox, a dropdown, we have to apply a unique name to this specific input and then recall that input to update the option, get the value of that option. So for now, just as a test, we can use this to specify a custom option, a custom field for the user to input his first name. The last attribute is the sanitize callback. So if we are not using the settings API, we have to specify a specific sanitization callback. So a function that handles properly the sanitization of whatever input we put inside our database. But because we're using the settings API, all this process is going to be automatically managed by WordPress. This function can still be useful if we decide to create something really particular. There is not just a simple checkbox, it's not just a simple input field. Maybe we want to save an array of values inside a single option. So we can use the callback function to handle those parameters, but we're going to take a look at the callback function in the next few lessons. Let's close this function with semicolon, and now we have registered a specific setting. So we have a specific portion, a specific field in the database called sunset settings group, and inside we have a custom option called first name. If you notice here, I use the underscore and not the dash. Instead here I use the dash. This is useful, it's kind of like a good practice to use the underscore when we have a single option name. So it's better to separate, use the dash for the group name and the underscore for the single option name. Now that we have this option recorded, we can go inside our template, the template that we specified, the sunsetadmin.php, and start customizing, creating a little bit our form. So let's delete this row, we don't need here, and let's write a sort of description, customize, sidebar options. And inside here, we can create our form with the method, has to be post, always post, never get. And we can leave the action empty. Let's close the form. And inside here, instead of writing all the HTML, the options, the function that we need to write in a normal HTML form or to save a post in PHP, we can just recall the settings that we just created. So let's open the PHP tag. And inside the PHP tag, we can call the settings underscore fields. And inside the brackets as an attribute, we have to put exactly the name of the settings group that we define in the register settings. So let's copy this, let's paste it in here, semicolon at the end, save it, and let's go take a look in the administration panel. Refresh the page. And inside here, of course, we cannot see anything because the form is completely empty. But if we open the inspector and we select where the form is, and we open the form in the inspector, you're gonna notice here, let me zoom in a little bit so you can see, we're gonna notice here that automatically WordPress included and created some custom input fields for us, and these inputs are hidden and are used by WordPress to properly manage the actions inside our form. So we have the first field that is the option page. So the sunset settings group is the same name that we specify in the register settings and is carried with the option page name. So WordPress will know that all the settings that we're gonna save inside this form are gonna be stored inside this specific option page, sunset settings group. The second hidden field is the action that we want to perform. And of course, because it's a form to update and refresh some specific custom fields, the action is set to update. The third hidden field is the WP_nonce. The nonce is a random value that WordPress generates when you access that specific page where the form is. This nonce is used by WordPress to check if the value is identical during the saving option. After you click like save on a form, WordPress will check if this nonce is exactly the same as it was before. This is really useful for WordPress because it prevents someone to trigger a form on an updating option or a database request to update, delete, or whatever without being inside the WordPress administration panel. And the last parameter, the fourth hidden input, is the actual value of the HTTP refer of our page. So we have exactly the same URL that we are right now. Now that we have the kind of the important stuff, the safety stuff, the safety hidden fields inside our form, we have to start populating the form with the options and inputs and checkbox and all the stuff that we actually need to save some custom settings. We're not gonna do it here. As I say, we're not gonna write any HTML in here because safety and like settings API and all this stuff. We're gonna do everything back inside our function-admin.php within these functions with the settings API functionalities of WordPress. So after the register settings, let's go on another line and let's use another function called add_settings_section. So the settings sections is as the name says, a section inside our settings. So what we want to do, basically, we want to create a specific group, a specific section to store all the fields. If we have an input field, a checkbox, a dropdown, whatever, that belongs to the same section, we have to store those fields and refer those fields to that section. And then we can render that section inside our form. I know that this could be complicated, but bear with me, and while we create this section, I can assure you that everything will be really clear and really easy. So the ID of the section we have to specify as a first attribute has to be unique ID as usual, and let's use the dash to separate words. So in my case, it's sunset sidebar options, because inside this section, I want to store all the options of my sidebar. The title of the section that is going to be print inside our form is the sidebar options. And also here within single quotes, because it's a string, it's not a variable. The third parameter is callback, is the actual function that is going to be called to generate whatever HTML we want inside. So also here as a string, we need to call the function sunset sidebar underscore options. And the last parameter is the page, where we want this section to be print and where we want all the fields applied to this section to be print. And the name of the page has to be the exact same ID that we specified when we created the custom page that we want to use. So if we go back in our code and we check the creation of the menu page, but in particular the first page, the general page where we are creating this form, you will notice that here this parameter, the first one, is the ID that we created to uniquely identify this page. So we have to input the exact same ID because we want this settings section to belong to this specific general page in our sunset theme options. So I know this could be kind of complicated, but it's pretty simple if like you can understand this section. So a little bit of recap. The first option is the ID of this section. So in this section, we want to store all the options of our sidebar. So we're gonna identify this section with the sunset sidebar option. This is the title of this section that is gonna appear. This is the function that we have to call to generate the HTML that we want in this section. And this is the ID of the page where we want to print this section. So my page is the alecad underscore sunset ID, is the sunset theme option general page. I have to put the same ID. And we created this section. So now we can create the function that we called to print whatever information we want. So let's create some space, function, same exact name, brackets, no variable passing. And here we can just simply echo customize your sidebar information. And let's save it. For now, let's keep it super simple to just not complicate too much the thing. So let's go back in our template part, and here finally we can trigger what we created. So let's go in another row. Let's open again our PHP tag, and inside here we can use another function called do underscore settings underscore sections. And the attribute of this function is the ID of the page where all our sections are stored. So if we remember, we created this section, the sunset sidebar options, and we stored this section inside the page alecad underscore sunset. So that's what we have to specify inside the do settings section. We have to specify not the name of the section, but the name of the page where the section belongs. So let's save it here. Let's go back in our administration panel, refresh. And as you can see here, we have the sidebar options. That is the exact same title that I specified here. So if I change sidebar option, refresh, you will notice this is changed. And this is the echo that I created in the callback function, customize your sidebar information. So what we can do now, because we are creating these dynamic sections, we can remove these silly HTML that we don't actually need and just leave simply the title. Everything else is gonna be managed by WordPress. To understand better the sections and to understand why we should use the section inside that admin page, I suggest you to go take a look inside settings in the permalinks section. In the permalinks section, we have, as you can see, the title of the page, a description, and then we have the common settings and the optional settings. So these two are two different sections. So WordPress generated with the same code that we used this common settings and store inside the common settings all these radio button options, and inside the optional settings these two input fields. So at this point, what we have to do, we have to finally create some custom input inside this sidebar option settings. So let's access back our code editor inside the function.admin. After the add settings section, we have to go in another row and inside here. And at this point, we have to use another function of the settings API called add underscore settings underscore field. This function gives us the ability to generate a custom field, a custom input, a custom HTML input to automatically store inside the WordPress database. The first attribute of this input field, as usual, is the unique ID. So in this case, I want to create a unique ID called sidebar name. The second parameter is the title of this section. So let's call first name. The third parameter is, as usual, the function that we want to call as a callback to generate whatever content we want here. So in my case, always as a string, sunset underscore sidebar name. The other parameter is the name of the page where this option belong, this field belong, and has to be exactly the same as the section that we want to use. So if we want to put these options inside the section, we have to use the same ID name of the page. So let's put the same ID. And the other parameter is the section name. So because we specified the same page and we want to put this field inside this section, we have to specify the section ID inside here. The last parameter is an array of arguments. If we want to, in the case we want to pass an array of random arguments or specific arguments, specific variables that we need for our custom field. But in this case, we don't. So let's just remove this parameter and let's close this option with a semicolon. Here, we now have to create the function that we specify, the sunset sidebar name, to print whatever HTML portion we want to print with this specific settings field. So let's create a function and let's call it function sunset sidebar name. That is the same function name that we specified before. Brackets. Let's open our brackets. And inside here, we can create an echo to print our input field. So input, type, I want to type text, and the name of the input field has to be exactly the same name of the settings that we registered at the beginning. So the register settings had the option of the option name. We have to use this one. So I want to register the first name. So the option is first name and save it here. Value. Let's close the input and semicolon at the end. So let's leave this value empty for now and let's go inside our administration panel and let's check what happened if we refresh the page. So as you notice here, now we have the HTML that we input, that we generated inside our code. And if we access here, of course, you will notice that automatically WordPress created for us the table with the proper classes applied to the table and the proper alignment. So this section is going to be exactly identical as a generic settings section of WordPress. What we want to do now, we want to create the submit button inside our form, and then we want to save our custom option. So inside here, instead of writing as usual the standard HTML to create a submit button, we can use a PHP tag and a function called submit button. Also, this submit button has plenty of options. We can customize the text name. We can customize what kind of button is it. Is it submit? Is just a button? For now, what I want to do, I want to just leave everything by default just to check how is a submit button from WordPress. So let's access again our administration panel, refresh, and here we have finally our submit button. So if we write, for example, my first name, I want to be Alex in my sidebar and save, automatically you will see that WordPress refreshed the page and stayed on the same page and did something, but well, we don't know what it did because we don't have any options here, any response, and we don't have the actual input value that we saved here. So to fix this, we have to create another options inside our code, of course. Here, if we access the function sunset sidebar name, the function that we call to generate the input field, first we can style with a nice placeholder. Let's put here first name. And inside here, the value, we want to input the value that we just saved. To do that, let's create a variable called first name. And this variable is equal to get option. And the option has to be, the ID of the option has to be the exact same ID of the settings that we registered at the beginning. So this function will retrieve for us inside our database this single value that we saved in WordPress in our custom setting. As a safety precaution, because this is an input from a user, we don't want to risk that this input can damage our database or our administration panel, we can always put an escape attribute function. We can wrap around this get option inside an escape attribute function to just escape all the malevolent attribute that could be injected inside this variable. And now we can print this first name inside the value of this input set. Let's save it. Let's access our administration panel, refresh. We have the first name here. Let's write Alex, save, and nothing is saved. So this is normal, don't worry, it's not a mistake. So we are missing a bunch of things. I wanted to show you the entire process and why something is not working, but it's really important to understand this process. So as I said before, here in the form generation in the HTML section, we don't need to put an action because the settings field function will generate for us the reference, the HTTP reference of our custom admin page. What we have to input though is the URL that WordPress uses to trigger all the options to update the database. So the URL in case is options.php. I know that this page is not the page that we're using, and if you know a little bit of HTML, you will know that if we submit a form to a specific page, that form is gonna actually move us from the page that we are to the specific page, in this case options.php. But if we take a look in the administration panel of WordPress and we check settings, the page settings is the page is actually optionsgeneral.php. And if we access the form and we take a look of the form, we will notice that here the actual form action is pointing the options.php. But as you will know, probably every time you save a page, you're not going to this options.php, but you're returning to the same page where you were before with an action and a response or whatever action you did. So that's the trick in WordPress. Basically what WordPress is doing is pointing all the forms to update the options to this page options.php that you don't actually see. You cannot access actually this page, but sending everything to this page can manage everything with this custom options that we specified as settings field and settings sections. And after saving updated variables or deleting whatever we want, automatically this page will send us back to our original page with carrying a message, an output message for us to understand what we did. So we have to input the action options.php, and before the form we have to use another function from the settings API that is, let's open the PHP tags. The function is settings error. These functions will print whatever message WordPress will give us by sending us back in our original page after passing through the options.php. So if we have a confirm, yes, you did a great job, the settings is saved, or there's an error, there's something that went wrong, we need this PHP function, this WordPress Settings API function to print, to trigger on the screen the actual error. Let's access again our administration panel. Let's refresh. Oh, fatal error. Oh, settings. Oh, I'm sorry, guys. This is settings errors. It's plural, not singular. So let's refresh again. And now we're good to go. So first name, I want to specify Alex. Let's click Save Changes. Automatically, WordPress will go to the options.php, save my settings, save my input, and send me back to my admin page. We are on the same page, but we just jumped super quickly on the options.php. We have here our callback, our functions callback with the message that setting saves, and we have finally stored inside our custom input field the name and we decided. So if we refresh the page or we change page and we go back here, this option is now stored and saved permanently. So it's pretty much everything from this lesson. In the next lesson, we're gonna properly customize this section and we're gonna create a full administration page with multiple options and multiple sections and multiple fields. And we're gonna see how to handle all these fields without getting overwhelmed by too much code. But for now, the settings API are kind of complicated, so I suggest you to watch maybe multiple times this video. I know that sounds kind of silly, but experiment with the settings API, and if you want, you can create your custom sections and your custom fields to store your custom options. So play with this section and let me know in the comment below if you have some issues, is something that is not properly right, but be sure to properly understand this section before jumping to the next video that is gonna be more complete, and we're gonna generate a full and fully functional administration page. So thank you again for checking this video. If you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up or subscribe to my channel. And if you want to know more about coding and developing, you can check these other two series that I just did, the WordPress 101 for beginner developers and the AliCAD Crash Course, where I explain super quickly how to use SASS in your daily project. And of course, if you really like what I'm doing, please consider to spend just a couple of minutes to visit this page, the support me page on my personal website, and take a look on how can you support this channel to help me to create more content and to create more videos, more tutorial, and more juicy stuff for you. So thank you again, guys, and as usual, until next video, happy coding!